Right. Welcome, everybody. Hello.
Oh, can we not get the feedback? Thank you.
It is now 2:08. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. Do we have a quorum? Think we do? Okay. And we can call roll.
I can call roll for you, Christy. Ms. Jill Hano,
Here.
Ms. Brooke Stewart, Ms. Renata Washington, Ms. Angela Harmon,
Here.
Ms. Christy Gonzalez.
Here.
You have 3 members present and you have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Ebony. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone of a few rules. For attendees, please wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking. And to help the meeting run smoothly, please keep side conversations to a minimum and comments related to the topic we are discussing. Also, comments about a person's character will not be allowed, right? We're gonna go over our October meeting summary. Does everybody have one?
It should be in the packet if they picked one up from over there.
Okay. Right. If there are no objections to the summary, does anybody have any objections to the summary? Since there are no objections to the summary, we can approve the summary by unanimous consent. Are there any objections? No. Right, hearing no objections, the October meeting summary is passed by unanimous consent. Okay. First on the agenda is consideration of council membership. We will have Ebony Haven and our vice chair, Jill Hano, provide an update about council membership. Ebony?
Okay, so in October, yeah, I can start, Jill, and
Okay.
you can take over.
Well, you know more. So
In October, you all voted for an applicant to fill the facility institutional seat, Ms. Christina Bechtold. After the meeting, we informed her that the council had made the recommendation for her to fill the seat. However, she contacted me maybe 2 days later and informed me that she had a change in her circumstances from when she was interviewed, and she just didn't feel like she could make the commitment. So she didn't want to accept the position. There was another applicant that the council received for membership in order to fill that particular seat. And the applicant's name was Miss Renee Holt. I included her application in y'all's packet. And so you have 2 decisions. You can extend her the offer to fill the seat. She did interview with Jill, so if you guys have any questions, Jill can answer those, or you can decide to put the position back out and we can accept new applicants and interview, and the membership committee would have to meet again to fill that seat. So those are your 2 options.
do you have her score, Ebony?
I can try and pull.
You don't remember?
No, it went. No,
It went out of, there's a lot going on. Understand.
Like, I'm, no, I like her.
I'm looking, hold on.
So we only had 2 applicants for that position, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay, so Miss Christina Bechtold, the person that you all did choose, she got a score of 12, and Miss Renee Holt got a score of 10.
Okay.
And that would have been out of 20. So I didn't score, I didn't make any of the scores. So I don't know if y'all have questions about how she answered questions. But Jill, you would have to answer those if they had questions about any of.
I almost, like, I was looking through paperwork and thought I saw her, her interview questionnaire, and I almost brought it, but then
So would you feel comfortable with?
I mean, I don't think, I think the iffy part on her interview was about the mission of the DD Council. But when I applied, like, I didn't even know there was a DD Council. So, I mean, so,
Can I add something, Christy?
Yes.
Just for y'all's consideration. So the position that she's filling is Rosalind Heimel. Rosalind's term ended on March 2022.
right,
Yeah, so yes, it's been over a year. We're almost in the 2 years because I mean, we're in
Okay.
December almost. So if you guys want to just consider that information in your decision as well.
Yeah.
right, because we could advertise it and then still not, especially since this position is so specific.
Mhm.
And so I remember I was impressed, like I said, I don't remember the details, but I did like her and she was really sweet.
Okay. We trust you. Yeah, click that. We trust you, interviewer. Okay. Y'all wanna go ahead and,
Yeah, let's just not
make a motion?
Make a motion for her to. Feel that.
Wait, hold on.
Okay.
Do you represent a local non-profit organization concerned with individuals? No. If so, what organization? Data Quest, that doesn't.
I think she just might have made a mistake.
Okay, because I was thinking,
Yeah.
I don't get that,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Okay.
I motion to bring to full council to submit Renee Hoyt to the governor for membership.
Well, I don't think it has to go back to it doesn't have to go back to the full council if that's the will of the executive committee.
Okay, I know now.
Fine.
Because we had an applicant and then she couldn't make the commitment. So you guys will be able to
Oh, okay,
make the recommendation.
Okay.
Mhm.
cool.
And I'll put
Alright.
the motion on the screen. Hold on one second.
How all day I'm in either hot or cold.
It's like that.
Yes.
Angela, did you second?
I will second.
Okay.
Yes. So I can go ahead.
Yep.
So we have a motion from Jill Hano to recommend Renee Hoyt to fill the institutional facility seat on the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council. We had a second by Angela? Okay, is there any discussion that we need to have? Is there any public comment? Right, any objections? All right. Any abstentions? 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 Abstention? That word is gonna follow me forever. I'm sorry.
And I'm gonna give
Abstention.
you grief
I know.
about it
I know.
forever.
So the motion to recommend Renee Hoyt to fill the institutional facility seat on the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council passes without objection. And no abstention. Oh, look,
No.
see, abstentions.
No.
Abstention.
Oh my God.
French, I'm related to all the French people. Can I
Abstention.
pronounce their names? Probably not.
That one word is gonna kill me for the rest of my life.
The pronunciation. yeah.
Uh-huh. All right, so that passed. We move back from Renee to our next meeting. Up next on our agenda is the 2024 Legislative Advocacy Agenda, Ms. Ebony.
Okay, so, in October, again, you guys voted for the 2024 Legislative Advocacy Agenda. One of the items was a funding increase for direct support worker pay raises. So on November 2nd, we had a LaCan call where Ms. Julie Foster Hagan, our OCDD, agency rep who sits on our council, came to discuss that particular item with the LaCan leaders and the FHF directors and, council staff. At that meeting, she informed us that there's no avenue where the Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities, or OCDD, or where the Louisiana Department of Health could directly pay direct support workers pay raises. So since there is no avenue to do that, we would have to change our agenda item. So, she kind of went over options with the FHF directors and the LaCan leaders. And just to kind of give you guys more information, the raise has to go through the providers. And I think the easiest avenue is for there to be an increase in the reimbursement rate. So we did that a couple of years ago where we increased the reimbursement rate to $18.50. And with that $18.50, there was a wage floor of at least $9 an hour for direct support workers. After learning that information, the LaCan leaders and FHF directors decided that they wanted to ask for another wage increase of $11 per hour.
This
So,
year,
yes,
okay.
they were gonna make that recommendation to you guys to increase the wage floor from $9 to $11 an hour.
Okay.
In the spirit of collaboration, we also met with the providers. We met with Kelly Monroe, Ashley McReynolds with the Arc of Louisiana. We met with Miss Caroline. I forgot your last name. Meehan, with the Community Providers Association, and we met with Miss Jackie Blaney with Independent Living, Supported Living Network. We had a very great discussion with them where they brought up concerns about the $11 per hour wage floor, increasing it. Some of the concerns were increased overhead costs for the provider agencies. And then also the ask would only be to increase wages for the DSWs. There are other staff within the provider agencies, office level staff, mid-level staff that would not receive a wage increase. And so the providers are here today. I'm gonna allow them to come to the table and just kind of present information. And then we also have our LaCan leader, Miss Christina, to present information to you guys on behalf of the families. So I'll just allow you guys to come to the table and discuss with the committee.
Okay. I'm set 2 Fs.
You can go. What's the trick for these chairs?
Put it down, yeah.
That's the trick.
I'm glad y'all went first. It's very convenient for storage.
Yeah, they are. They're nice. Yeah, yeah. Feel good. Yeah.
Wait, what?
The
Money
chair,
well spent.
the chair.
Nice chairs.
They were folded.
What are you storing? What?
And
They were
let's,
talking about
then when you're done with it, we'll talk about you that. pull this up.
How?
And so they like. come
Okay.
Together. I just thought it was cool. I'd never seen that before from like an office chair. I'm like, ooh, it's fascinating, the office furniture.
Okay.
Okay. Fancy.
Oh.
Thank y'all for coming. Yeah, y'all can just.
Okay, I can kick us off. Again, nice to meet. I know some of y'all, not all of y'all. I'm Caroline Meehan, with the Community Provider Association, which is a statewide advocacy group for waiver providers and other disability service providers. I really thank y'all for having us. It is my first time here in person at a DD Council meeting because I started my job in 2020. So I've been virtual for most of them. But I just appreciate the partnership with the council we've had over the past few years. As y'all know, we've gotten some significant rate increases for waivers, and I know we've worked with y'all to get that done. So that's why we're coming to you today and hope we can continue to work together in this session. And before I get into, I guess, what the 3 provider groups are gonna present and work on during this session, just to kind of level set. I think, we're all coming from different perspectives, right? I mean, we're coming from representing providers. Y'all are coming from representing yourselves, your children, your family members. But at the end of the day, I know and I believe what we all want is good quality services for people with disabilities in communities with well-qualified, consistent staff. I mean, I think nobody can argue with that. And we know, and y'all know better than anyone, that one of the main barriers to quality, consistent staff is low DSP wages. And so that's something, our provider members talk about all the time. I know obviously it's a major concern for the council. And so we've been thinking about ways to tackle that over the past few years. And I think, doing the rate increases, doing the wage floor, and I think where we've kind of landed is what we really want to work on is the root cause of the low DSP wages, which is the fact that Louisiana doesn't have a rate reimbursement methodology for these services. So until we have that, until we really know the cost of providing the whole service that somebody receives, not just the DSP and the DSP wage, which is the core component of the service, but all the other things that support that DSP and that service. Until we have an actual model to know how much that costs, I think we're going to keep running into the same problem, the same conversation every year. I know in most states have a rate methodology. So what they start with is, this is what we think a DSP should be paid. Like, this is the per hour amount. And then they build from that. Okay, if we want to pay a DSP this much, how much is everything else going to cost? How much is insurance going to cost? Supervision, transportation, overtime. I mean, we have some providers here who can talk about all the other expenses, but all that stuff has to come out of that reimbursement rate that the state pays. And so what we're hoping to work on, we're making an ask to the department. They have some leftover money from the American Rescue Plan Act. That some of that money was used for DSP bonuses. Y'all might remember that. They have some money left over, and we want to ask them to use that money to develop a rate methodology for these services in Louisiana. So that's what we've kind of decided, rather than continuing to try to build on this really shaky, almost non-existent foundation, and adding more wage regulations or just doing, bits and pieces trying to get that wage up. If we can just start at the bottom and get a stronger foundation. So that's what we, that's what we're talking about within our 3 provider groups, and are going to make that ask to the department. And so that's what we wanted to talk to y'all about today, and then hear a little bit more, I think, about what you're hoping to accomplish for session. But Kelly, Jackie, JP, do y'all want to anything?
We had JP kind of went back and like looked at what actually comes out of the rate. And so I'd like to like pass some of this. I hope I have enough. Jackie, you and I will share. And then I'll bring these over here.
Oh, I'll get another one if we make something.
I got that. Here, there you go. I had some. Well, y'all share.
Merry Christmas.
And,
Cal.
Okay.
Yeah.
I look away.
Merry-
Yes.
Merry Christmas, Dean.
Well,
Merry Christmas.
well, green's for money. Always,
Oh.
whenever I do budgets, I always put them in green. This, so, cause.
That's all I can think, yes.
And then in the red is just to draw the attention to, like, this is exactly what has to, like, we have to pay for. But if you look at what's the cost, just in that first big square of what the rate is, what's the average hourly wage that people are getting? And then all these others hourly averages. So if you look at it, the total is $23.95 on a day reimbursement rate of $18.50. So they're losing $5.45 roughly, it's an average. But if you look at the night rate, which is paid at $13.52, they're losing $10.43 to serve someone at night. And I just wanted to kind of put this together. We all four or five of us were like, let's put something together that's super simple,
Oh,
that really kind of speaks to exactly what is it that we pay out of this $18.50 rate. So that's what this whole top piece is going to be. And then everything else, we still have to pay for all of these other things. Liability insurance, like all of the other things. And I know some of it's just kind of like, oh, well, that's tough luck of owning a business. But truth be known, that's the only funds that come in. So we have to use the money that we get on our reimbursement to cover all of these things. So I wanted to kind of just like show this to you guys, see if you had any questions. If it was, I feel like it's self-explanatory, but if there's anything that maybe we could expand on, JP runs a provider organization. And so he would be able to probably be better to answer some of the questions. Anyways.
Can you go over like the insurance, like,
Yeah,
I mean, I understand like all the other stuff, but like the insurance, the non-owned auto insurance.
yeah.
Yeah, so that'll just be your general liability or
Okay.
anything for your to cover your business or
I gotcha.
duties and officers and directors. Like Kelly mentioned, I am Jason Gaspard. I'm the executive director at the ARC Baton Rouge. And this gives you good representation on a daily basis, some of the information that we look at.
Mhm.
With just our Medicaid reimbursement alone, last fiscal year, so for the 22-23 fiscal year, if the ARC would have only been able to receive funds from Medicaid, we would have lost $232,000. So and that's not on that sheet there. I just pulled some numbers from our financials. So we then have to go out and try to find grants or other opportunities in the community, which, as you know, coming off of COVID, that some of those funds and some of those spots, people aren't in a position to offer that. Where we're currently at through 4 months of the 23-24 fiscal year, I annualized where we would be at. And for the 22-23 or 23-24, excuse me, we would be losing an additional $206,000 as well. So in a 2-year period, almost $450,000 if we just look at what Medicaid reimburses us to provide a service.
Yeah.
So that's our biggest thing is we want to offer a livable wage to our direct support workers. No one at the ARC is stuff in their pockets or has a large salary, but this just shows you what the day-to-day business is. So I think the methodology would be great. And we're all for moving our folks to 11 or higher, but that has to be tied into reimbursement rates on Medicaid.
And that's what I wanted to ask. So, would you want it, if we wanted to increase, you're not getting the reimbursement back to make up for the difference for what you're paying the workers, correct?
Well,
Well,
I can speak to whenever in October of 2021, whenever there was a rate increase
Mhm.
with Medicaid reimbursement. The LDH or, yeah, the legislature said that your direct support workers have to make at least $9 an hour. So some of the reimbursement went to us, but then some of it went to get those folks up to $9 an hour. Originally, they talked about $1.75 increase to every single employee. That was the talk after the fact. If the ARC would have had to do that, that would have cost us $187,000. So we moved everyone up that wasn't at 9. But for example, if somebody was at 850, we had to get them to 9. But then they talked about if they're at 850, you need to give them that $1.75. So that would have been 9 and change. If we'd have had to do that for every single direct support worker that we had on staff, that would have cost an additional $187,000 a year. Then I annualized the same thing. If we had to move everybody's current wage where they're at now to 11, that would cost the ARC $205,000 a year. So we just need our Medicaid reimbursement to increase because before they increased our rates in October of 21, which it really wasn't an increase, they restored our rates from 2008 levels. So no business can continue to operate on their same revenue levels on a 13, whenever you're at the same mark 13 years later.
Yeah.
We don't have any control of going and changing what we provide for.
yeah, and I think it's also important to know that unlike other businesses around where they're like, oh, well, McDonald's is paying X amount of dollars and these people are paying, well, McDonald's also gets to increase their rate.
They
that
set their own
charge
rate.
for Hamburgers. And we can't. So everything we do is just whatever this reimbursement rate is, that's what you have to go on. And so we don't have the luxury of saying, well, we're gonna charge Medicaid more for services. We just don't have that luxury. But it's also important, I know, before, LDH was saying, oh, well, we don't require this or we don't require that, but licensing does. And so if they don't require it, licensing does require it, and that's why it's on the sheet of paper. So supervisors that nobody thinks about, the DSPs are making almost as much as the supervisors in some situations. And that's gonna cause a huge problem when supervisors are expected to jump in and do X, Y, and Z whenever, people are out. It's just, if, like Caroline was saying, if we could think about like not doing this for right now and just doing the rate methodology and really taking a look at it. I mean, there is one thing that we are going for, money wise, and it's to have the night rate and the day rate to be the same because it is a $5 difference and that is causing a huge issue. But if we could focus on, and where all of us work together on getting the rate methodology, getting LDH to agree to that. And then once they do it, we know it's going to come back saying it's not adequate. I mean,
Yeah.
we know that's what's going to say. But once it comes back, if we can all get back in the room together and then work together in order to come up with, okay, so what should it be? Like, what should the rate be? And then what should the floor be for the DSPs? And knowing that there are other people that support that service every day, that should also be increased too, and not just the DSPs.
Again, the beauty of the methodology going forward is it's like a formula, right? So we could, in some states, it's the dream, right? They have automatic rate increases every
Mhm.
few years,
Step increase.
yes, to support where DSP should be and where all the other staff should be. So
Maybe we add that next year, though.
that'd be,
Maybe
yeah,
we add that every, 3 to 4 years, it needs to be looked at.
looked at and then the methodology can tell you, like in a formula, all right, we think DSP should make $15 an hour. If that how much does the rate need to increase to support all the other things that have to be paid for?
Okay.
Rather than us just kind of,
Having to look elsewhere.
yeah.
That's a
Well,
lot.
looking elsewhere,
Yeah.
Yeah,
looking elsewhere is just non-existent anymore. I mean, you can run fundraisers, but
It's,
they're not.
yeah, the same people keep giving.
That's
you know.
right.
United Way is giving less money these days because nobody's given to United Way. It's just, it's bad all the way around. Yeah.
I can only speak for myself in terms of how I developed my own ideal around what the service provider pay should have looked like. So I actually went and looked at a few different models, and I think I sent it to you guys in the group me, but New York State, for example, pays their direct service workers $23 and some change an hour. And while I know in state comparison of funds and taxes and all those things, we're not anywhere close to that, I feel like it's discouraging for some of our families and maybe even some of our workers where they hear from these other states that, you know, I make $25 an hour, I make $18 an hour. And so,
What's that reimbursement rate though?
well, I have to go, yeah. I have to
It's
go
in the
look
30s.
For that,
Upper
right,
30s,
right.
in the-
Reimbursement rate, the rate that goes to the provider.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's in the 30s in New York.
And I guess why I recommended the $11 an hour was because that was half of that, right? So I figured that we could at least probably substantiate half of that. I do understand the reimbursement, and I want us to be able to work together so that we can get you guys paid through proper reimbursement and also get our direct service workers money that they need. There was also something that was mentioned to me that we had not thought about before, and I can't speak for everyone, so I'll be calling a leader meeting so that we can, you know, gather more information around this. But that some of this is actually affecting individuals' abilities to continue to get things like Medicaid and be, you know, qualified for
Yeah.
certain services
Yeah.
that they weren't gonna
Yeah.
qualify before, or
Mhm.
that they were qualified for before. And so I think we do need to have some discussion around that as well, because of course we want our people to make more money, but we don't want to put them in a middle class bracket to where they're no longer able to afford outside insurance and no longer qualify for government
Yeah.
subsidy. So we're definitely going to have some conversations about that. I can't speak for all the LACAN leaders. I do agree that there needs to be some type of methodology, because without the methodology, you're basically just running amok, right? And so I don't know what you guys, because this is y'all's thing, I don't know if that's something that y'all are interested in. I know I'm definitely interested in. I hope the rest of our LACAN leaders would be interested in that as well. But how does that affect our agenda? And like, what would that look like? Because if we were to say, like, can we advocate for, you know, for a method? Can we do that
I think
portion, or is that?
I think they're
something that would have
willing to
be-
do it. We're writing a letter and requesting it now. And I think there's interest by the department.
Yeah.
To do it now. So
Okay.
I don't think we have to advocate for that. I think it's gonna be. We're gonna turn something in by the end of the week. We're hoping that you guys will sign on, but we're gonna turn it in regardless and request it. So,
it doesn't have to be done legislatively.
yeah, it doesn't have to be done legislatively.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's what I was about to say. Would we be taking that, like, how would that look for us as LACAN leaders for our agenda?
Cause
Because honestly, you know, if we take that off the agenda, we're gonna get pushback from the community. So I want to make sure that I'm the most informed possible, so that when I go back on the grassroots level, I'm able to explain to people why we came to the decision that
Yeah.
we did. Okay.
Cause, the actual rate would be in that. I have the one issue, but to make like method out, whatever, like that would be different type of. That would be a separate instrument, correct?
Yeah.
That would help us see about raising the floor of the reimbursement rate.
It would
correct?
create a formula for them to be able to see it as a whole and not just in spatial parts.
And that way we're not having to go back over and over and over.
And ask.
I think that would be something.
Agreed.
if we say something, and tell me how this sounds, if we say something like funding increase for direct support workers, pay raises based on the state rate methodology determined by, this official process.
LDH, right?
Yeah.
Y'all think about that?
Did we y'all say y'all wanted to add besides just direct service personnel?
I couldn't hear you.
The other
The
staff.
other-
Well, I think that when you do the rate methodology, it's gonna include that, and so you won't have to.
So that would encompass us
Okay.
taking care of
'Cause I don't-
everyone.
yeah.
Yes.
Not just the provider,
Okay,
not just the
yeah.
worker.
Yeah, not
Well,
just the
say
worker.
DFPs and not,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a,
I just,
there's a lot of support that goes into that DSP being able to do what they can do.
Mhm.
And we certainly don't wanna not count them in. And what happens is that, let's say JP had some of them that were closer to 9 and he bumped them up to 9 or whatever. Some of that other money went probably, I don't want to speak for him, but I know for some of the other providers, it went to up in those other staff too. Because they're like, wait a minute, what about me? Like
Yeah, you shouldn't have.
I've
your-
covered for them several times, I've done whatever, yeah,
I think, yeah.
There's
the-
no incentive at that point to be a supervisor.
none at all.
but from now, from a DSP need provider, like a level of need perspective, and I don't know, like, I can't put words in my agency's mouth, but I'm on the low end. And like, so, I mean, I've never had staff calling and, okay, let me find you back up, or okay, the owner be like, okay, I'm coming. And to be honest, like, I mean, I'm having a friend come over once a week to help me with my groceries, with my hygiene, blah and blah, and then my mother, who is great, like my mother takes me into all my appointments, cooks for me, helps me with banking and all that. But like, so as a consumer, like, the only help I'm getting is my PCA. So like, when you say rate reimbursement, like, I have such a hard time with this, because like, why do you need a reimbursement to blow me off? Like, and before I had my mom, I obviously had PCAs come over, sleep, like, not like night shift, but like, hey, and I'm the type of person, I don't need 8 hours of care. So in an 8-hour service, gonna take a nap or gonna do something, some downtime for me, and I'd rather you go home than take a breather just to get your 8 hours in. Like, so from my perspective, which I am trying to be better at, but like, the provider rate, like, I mean, I know my I know this affects so much more than below my fingertips, but like, I don't see it. I mean, like, pay you $45 to call me back in 3 weeks when I have already solved the issue.
Well, I mean, there's gonna be issues with providers. I mean, I'm not gonna lie and say that everybody's perfect. They're not.
Right.
But if you continue to have issues like that, if I were you, I would start looking for another provider. Because that's not the way it's supposed to happen. And so that's what I would do. I mean,
And so to kind of summarize and piggyback off of what Jill said in a more grand perspective of things, is that when we have a wage that is to most so low, you don't get the quality control that you need to support someone of even a higher function. So how are we to ensure that people like my daughter, because to be honest with you, I haven't put my daughter on a waiver yet, because there is no one that would be qualified to take care of her as a DSW. That's just honest. And I don't have the time to do the whole self-determination thing, right? Do I want Vinaya to have a worker? Absolutely. But my daughter is severely, profoundly disabled. She's nonverbal, she's aggressive, she's all the things, right? And so to put someone in there to do that physical position with her for $9 an hour, I'm not going to keep anybody.
Right.
And I'm putting my daughter at risk by doing so, because then I'm putting her in there, no offense to any DSWs because I'm not on camera, but with the potential for someone to not be educated enough to know what to do with her. It leaves my daughter vulnerable to abuse. It leaves her vulnerable to neglect, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So I think the biggest problem with our families is quality control. We want to be able to have workers that we can actually trust to be around our family members that are making an adequate rate so that they can go home and take care of their families too, because this is such a high stress level job. Being a mom of a kid severely, profoundly disabled, it is sometimes a debilitating job, even as a parent. So, and this is just my honesty, how can I put that on someone else and then say, oh, well, I'm gonna give you $9 an hour. Hope it's good for you. So that's where we're running into the disconnect, is that we agree that reimbursement, all the stuff that goes into the industrialized setting of it has to be remediated as well. But we're looking at the immediate desired need of our families because they have people who have had to cut back hours, not be able to work. They're not being able to provide for their families because they don't have an adequate care specialist in there with them. This is kind of not an agenda item, but while we're on that subject, I personally have said this, and I'll ring it to the ears, that we need to create pathways for direct service workers to get not necessarily skilled nursing professional degrees, but some sort of subsidy where they're more educated, they're more trained, they have opportunities for growth, right? So that we don't have to continuously come back in and be like, look, you're doing baseline medial work, but we want you to make $14 an hour. If you're CPR certified, if you're this certified, LaSard certified, all these things, right? So depending on whatever that pathway looks like for you, you can get more of a rate increase. But right now we're stuck with it's just, I'll use this for lack of better terms. I'm a burger flipper, right?
Yeah.
I can't never be anything more than a burger flipper without the appropriate training.
Right.
So unless someone comes in and shows me how to do a management position, I'm going to be stuck in that medial income that whole time. And so our direct service workers are experiencing not being able to move forward in their positions due to not having a certification pathway. But then our families are getting the repercussions of that by not having certified, trained, skilled professionals working with some of our most vulnerable. So I think that ultimately our goal is to bridge that gap, to make sure that we have skilled professionals working with our disabled community, but also to make sure that our providers are thriving so that they can continue to provide these services to our community. So if there is a way that we could bridge that gap, that would be great.
I have something, and when you said pathways, it just clicked in my mind. We have this process with early childhood and daycare providers. We have a pathway set for them. The state does, so where they get more education, they go on this pathway to get their associates, and then they can be the director of a center and so forth. Why can't we use the same pathway for our direct support workers and follow the same, the same procedure? We can model it off of that. And that would be something to look at. Yes.
So just to speak on that, OCDD is working with local
Mhm.
colleges
Mhm.
to create that. So they're starting with,
Perfect.
if I remember correctly, I think it's
Baton Rouge Community.
Baton Rouge Community College and Southern. For some
Yeah,
reason, I
that
think it's
sounds
Southern.
Familiar.
So they are, I have also thrown out the idea several times of creating a jumpstart pathway.
Mhm.
To allow those in high school to get some specialized
Yeah,
training
credits.
and like
Yeah.
credentials.
Yeah.
Because they do go into the nursing, the pre-nursing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think a push for a jumpstart pathway would be great. I love that they're, starting in with some community colleges and Southern University. I think it's a great place to start, but I don't think we should not look at the jumpstart pathways
Mhm.
to allow those in high school to get credentialed and certified. And then that pulls a lot of the training costs off of the providers. They'll come in trained and certified and credentialed, and then they can just go to work. So I think a jumpstart pathway is something that still needs to be like put on the
Well, it could be
table.
part of this pathway. You could have the 2 tracks when you graduate.
Yes.
It could be one of those tracks.
Yeah.
I mean, combining the 2 is a no-brainer. I mean, but sometimes the no-brainer just
Mhm.
Yeah,
kinda
right.
falls off the track,
The
but
legalities of it all.
yes. So, but I think having that pathway would definitely step up our quality control for our DS workers.
It would make them more accredited.
Yes.
It would make people more willing to want to invest in them because
In
they don't feel like
themselves.
they're investing in burger flippers, to be
Mhm.
quite
Yeah.
frank and honest, right? Someone with a high school education. You are asking me now for $18 an hour.
Yeah.
And I personally, the more education you get, the more money you make, right? That's just the way our
Mhm.
society and the world works. But not giving them those opportunities keeps them at burger flipper forever.
And I will
So-
tell you that many agencies do have that kind of system in organizations. I very much support making it something that's available and encouraged by the state so that we have a more consistent policy of that. But many of our agencies do have levels, if you will, based
Like
on
Baton Rouge did.
training, based on experience, based on the difficult challenges where the work is performed. So monitoring what health standards licensing refers to as monitoring, what we refer to as quality assurance, is one of the reasons that the level of in-house support coordination or supervision or management, whatever, we all use different titles sometimes, is there to go in and do on-site training, to be able to get that level, the quality of that level, to know that when somebody is experiencing a challenge, that you look at what needs to happen and you have enough education at that level to do on-site training for staff. The state Department of Health requires us to go in and do regular on-site visitations. Now, the quality of those visitations is going to be depend on the experience and education and understanding of that person going in to do that. So that's one of the reasons we encourage us to look at all levels of staff. The other thing is that I'm really happy to hear you talk about the value of education. Because the training, you notice the training is on the sheet. Training is something that comes out of the rate, is important, but it's never really funded the way it ought to be, you know what I mean? And that just like any other industry, any other area, if you don't have that quality, ongoing education, then you will lag in best practice. I've been around 35 years. And I'm still learning, right? So we have to have that, but it's not funded.
Yeah.
The best practice is out there in the world.
Yeah.
And
It's not
also, it's called Louisiana Pathways for the education track.
Mhm.
And there's also a tax credit, there's scholarships. There's a lot of things that could go into the DSWs to further their education as well and provide a more equitable service for the families too. So I think that this would be something really that would be good for both sides, every side.
We need the department to also buy into it,
Mhm.
because once you have an education, those people want money for that education.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
You
yeah.
need to, they need to be part of the conversation also.
And have a career ladder.
Yeah.
to Go up.
Yeah.
So it's something maybe we
Right.
can model off of it.
Or
just-
other states do similar things.
Yeah.
DSPs for sure.
Yeah.
And then the rate, again, going back to the methodology.
Yeah.
The methodology accounts for if you get certain continuing education, certain
Mhm.
certifications,
You move up.
you move up.
Yes. But
Um,
it's something I think that would benefit everyone.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
I would absolutely would.
And I say that to say, because I have families that say some of the workers are great. But then I have families who say, as Jill mentioned, my worker came over here and slept for 7 hours, slept for 8 hours, And so while anyone can do that, people who are more inclined to not do that are ones who are more educated on their job position and what that actually entails. So I just think more training, more education, more of those things creates more money, right?
Mhm.
And so that's our ultimate goal, is to get them trained, certified, skilled in the homes, and then retained.
Yeah.
We want them to be retained. We want them to continue to be able to excel based off their skilled profession. And I agree that, I never want to tell someone as a business owner, own a graphics business. I don't ever want to tell someone what they should pay their employees. I don't want nobody telling me what I should pay my employees. But I think conversations about us working together to get everyone on the same page and happy is definitely where we need to be. Because LaCan definitely is not against providers. We want to make sure that everyone is equally taken care of so that everything is covered. And so if we need to have other conversations, maybe you think, Ebony, with the other leaders around what that would look like. If Christy wanted to make a recommendation to change the agenda item, I'm not really exactly sure how that would look for us.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know how that looks for us,
So LaCan is the council's advocacy
Yeah.
board.
Mhm.
So you guys
It would be
are,
their
this is
decision.
y'all's decision on.
Okay.
Yeah, I
what
said, I don't
you
even know
want
if I
to
have
do.
any dominion in this. This is just my suggestion.
So instead
Right.
what was the
right.
purpose of putting this on the agenda? Like, cause I'm still not really sure what we are.
We can't tell them to increase the pay. We can't,
Right.
yeah.
We, okay,
The agenda item is
Yeah.
y'all voted for it in October.
Yes.
There's
okay.
no way for OT.
Yeah.
And to,
Yeah.
there's no avenue for them to give the workers
So-
a pay raise.
Yeah.
So it comes down to, this is a
Mhm.
verbiage issue because we've like, cause I mean, in my simple mind, if we had written to increase the provider rate, we wouldn't be having this meeting.
Let me explain to you why we worded it the way we did. Because there were a lot of people that felt an inadequacy between the last reimbursement raise or the last wage floor raise, excuse me. Having this made it so much easier for me to understand, right? Because now I know I have all these things that I have to take in count into that reimbursement rate.
Right.
That's something that we didn't have before. So knowing that, okay, now we're in the hole, basically $15, over, let's say we have a worker that worked 24 hours, just metaphorically speaking. By the end of the day, now the ARC is in the hole $15 an hour. Or,
Per hour,
you know,
yeah.
right,
So,
at
and
the
then
end of
over
the
the
day.
year, at the end of the year, it's 200 and something.
If at
Right.
$11 an hour, every DSP, they would be $205,000 in the hole
Yeah.
without a provider reimbursement.
Yes.
So that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then that makes the ARC not be able to be substantial or provider services
Yes.
not being able to be substantiated.
And you may have families that use self-direction.
Mhm.
In self-direction, those companies are able, they're reimbursing
Yeah.
off the same rates as us. I have a cousin who's utilizing that service. They're able to offer $16 an hour. So yes,
Mhm.
that is a lot better wage than our starting wage, but it's the education part, like you mentioned.
And they don't
because
have any of this.
They have none of that. They're getting 16, but they don't have the training and they're still having the same issue of finding people. So money is
This
is a huge part.
This is what company?
This is coming from the ARC.
Self-direction.
No, these figures are for the ARC Baton Rouge.
Okay, that's what I was,
Yeah, but
okay.
the self-direction just doesn't have any of these overheads.
Yeah.
I was actually, I worked with my cousin. Our only training was we had to turn in our driver's license, our car insurance, and do once every 3 years CPR first aid.
Didn't they change that though? Now with self-direction, don't you have to do like an annualized report kind of, or no?
Yeah.
As for, you mean training or to do?
As far as like what you provided as a service?
Oh, you mean?
Because like as a parent being the service provider, now I have to send you a report of the services I provided, whether monthly, annually, how does that work?
Gotcha. Well,
To sign a sheet of paper attesting that you have
Oh, yeah, that-
read everything that
Pretty much
is
it.
is required of you, but it's not an actual, you have to
It's not the
sit.
same assurances as,
No.
as a
And
worker.
they're-
Okay,
and they're-
that's what I'm trying to see, because I'm not waiver.
They're apples and oranges. You
Right.
can't
Yes.
compare the two. They're apples and
Yeah.
oranges.
yeah, and my point to bring that was also, we've had some families leave the ARC. They still use us for day habilitation, but on their in-home or respite PCA side, they've left. Then a few months later, they've come back and said, hey, can our family member come back, because they had difficulties finding the workers even with that higher wage. So
I
it
can't
is
find
part of
staff
it.
For my son at
Right.
16,
Mhm.
whatever it is. I mean, you
Yeah.
just.
Same here.
Yeah, there's a lot of
There-
people who have
it-
problems
and
with that.
And I brought this up in our meeting with Ebony and a couple other council staff. This industry is never going to be where it was just a few years ago. Like, people are not going into this field of work. Everything is such a technology-driven world that wage is such a small piece of the puzzle at the end of the day. Like, we have to really get creative on our delivery service system. Remote supports, technology supports, whatever that might be. Without that, you're gonna have people going without services because people are just not entering this field anymore.
So we need to,
Much.
we would need to reword our agenda item. I know we said about developing a methodology and maybe levels of pathways.
Sorry, what was your name?
Jackie?
Jackie, will you read your recommendation again so Christy can hear it about how you said
Writing it down. Okay,
about,
Wrote it down, I think.
I have a plan of it, but not.
For direct support workers and other staff, I'm just based on information determined.
to the methodology, that was it, yeah.
To the methodology, and maybe we can add, develop a pathways of.
I wouldn't.
Not,
go
do we,
that
I wouldn't
way.
do line items, no.
There would be
I
two
think
items.
different items
Yeah.
separate, okay?
Yeah.
We can do two
Miss
separate.
Jackie,
I got a question. So when you hire people, say you would just hire me, if I come in off and say, hey, it's something I'm interested in
Yeah.
doing, there's no real qualifications, is that what
We
you're?
we have a job description, we have a screening tool, and then we have our entire staff does the interview. So I have 4 supervisors and an HR person who conducts the interview, all of whom have more than 10 years' experience.
Okay.
So when you're interviewing someone with your son, your son, your son in mind.
Okay.
And knowing that person gives you a good way of saying, is this person going to be a fit? Part of it sometimes is this person really needs someone who could take them to work or take them. Do you have a valid driver's license and valid transportation? If not, you get screened out, you don't get
Okay.
interviewed.
Okay.
And
Do a background check, of course.
It's for
We have a
us.
background check, and
Or it's
then,
real.
we have a screening tool that includes questions having to do with, do you It's written in a way to figure out if the person believes in person-centered approaches.
Okay.
Okay.
And self-direction. So it's written, the words are written in a way to pull from that person. How do you feel about that?
Right.
And if they score well enough, then they get invited back to go interview with the parent
Okay,
or the person.
okay,
And if you're not hired until you do all of that.
okay.
And then you go through the 16 hours training, you can blow out of that at any time. If you have to complete all of that, and then you're offered employment. And it's real important. I know we've said this, and I really, my name is Jackie Blaney again, but I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to y'all. And when I was driving over here, the phrase "better together" kept coming through my mind. I know that's a cliche, but it is so important to know that. And you know, my gang here that pulls me into this sometimes, that we are better together. And I appreciate the opportunity to meet y'all, because most of you I have met. But we know that it's so important to have that ongoing training. So I was glad to hear you talk about that. Recruitment and retention is a huge issue. We're getting ready to have a Christmas party, and my staff came to me a few minutes ago and said, we want to give a special something to the people that's been with us 20 years or more. I'm like, what? We have 10 people that have been with us over 20 years. But that's putting an emphasis on, and we have about 95 staff.
Okay.
That puts in, because we put an emphasis on what does it take to retain this person. A chunk of it is money, I'm gonna tell you, because you gotta pay the bills. But a chunk of it also is, do you feel valued? And does your opinion count? So when we have what we call leadership meetings, and that's DSPs within the organization who have, for one reason or another, have passed the leadership test. And it's not a literal test, if you know what I mean. Okay. But those leadership meetings are trainings, but they're also listening sessions. So when those staff say, well, you know, we think that if all of us did X, Y, Z, it would be a better outcome for people. You know, I'm sitting, you know, I know most of our folks, but I don't make the decisions. It's made based on those kind of discussions. Those are retention strategies.
So let's go ahead and make our motion. And then that way we can make sure that we need to be where we need to be. So we want to reword our agenda item.
So before y'all make the motion, the survey methodology doesn't need.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be.
Doesn't need it in
A
a
legislative
motion. Okay.
item.
Okay.
So this is for y'all's legislative agenda.
Okay.
So the survey methodology doesn't have to be on the agenda, because I think they just said that they're already interested in doing that.
Okay.
But
If y'all want to sign on to the letter, I don't know if you need a motion for that.
Out of there that direct service providers will receive compensation once the methodology is created.
Yeah, but
From-
by saying that, that means that if this passes, nothing happens until LDH completes the methodology.
Yeah,
And so then the
Yeah.
providers get nothing until, and I'm wondering if, like, is this something that we can like table until the rate methodology is over? Can that entire like piece?
Can we do that, Ebony? Can we table not like table it for 2 years down the road, but just table it till we've like
Till next
have a
year.
methodology.
have a methodology? Can we do that?
So you guys, this is y'all's agenda.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you
Okay.
can table
Okay.
it. I do want to just make sure that I am, and I wanted the providers to come and give their perspective, but I also want you guys to keep in mind that the LaCan leaders
Mhm.
and the FHF directors work hard
Mhm.
to recommend items to you guys.
Yes.
They're having those membership
Mhm.
meetings. They're the ones that are on the ground
Mhm.
with the families and getting information from them. So I'm not sure how long the rate methodology, I know I keep saying survey.
Right, right.
Yeah, I know.
My most
But
concern
The
is
rate
the
methodology is
timeline.
gonna
But
take.
if we have that rate methodology, we wouldn't have to come back over and over again.
Right.
But
I mean,
to
as
answer your
a-
question, yes, you guys can decide to take this agenda item off altogether. I know Kelly mentioned that they were going to advocate for making the night rate the same as the day rate. So, I mean, we could collaborate with them on that, or you guys can come up with a totally new agenda item altogether.
I like.
And that's hard to do right now because we don't have all the list of all the
Yeah.
ones we had previously. I know a few off the top of my head, but I do not know exact what were in our like top 10 to. Right.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Because I feel horrible because after Christina talking, like my needs are nothing compared to Janae's needs. And like, I just feel bad and that defeated the purpose of me being on this council. Like, I thought from my perspective, when I needed to look past my nose tip in, or what's the saying?
Pass it through your nose.
Yeah.
And, I need to, like, look at this from the perspective of the greater good. So I apologize to the room for like being kind of chippy when it came to this, because I understand that DSW is more than taking you shopping, taking you to
They can be, they don't have to.
dust.
Yeah.
Like, so I just wanted to like put that out there.
Now, I will say, in terms of the day-night match, testimony for that is gonna be extremely hard to get because no one is gonna really understand what that encompasses on a ground level. So. if
I'll
we
do whatever you tell me to do.
I feel like it's gonna be easier than being, because the expenses. Well, the expenses are the same, whether you work in
Yeah.
days or nights, the costs are the same. So I actually think it's gonna be a lot easier, and if anything, we have to pay our night people way more money than we pay the day people. Because we can't get anybody who wants to come and stay in the middle of the night. Most people who are DSPs are women. And most women have families, they can't break away
Right.
from those families to go stay
Right.
with other
Yeah.
families in the middle of the night.
Families that have night hours that can't get them served, that can't get them filled.
Yeah.
That's who I would go after.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do y'all think? We probably should
Table it.
table it.
I think
So
we should table it.
I think
Yeah, we
we
just.
should.
Yeah, around.
Yeah.
I think too, I don't know, like, I just think like right now, solution maybe to close the gap between the day rates and the night rates.
as a first step.
Okay, and then
Right,
what do you guys feel about maybe,
or do we, wait. Do we want the day rate and the night rate the same?
To match.
Mhm.
Okay, that's what I thought, but
Yeah.
then lost. Then my mind flip-flopped or something.
So maybe we could go with the date, having the day and night rate the same, and then while we do that, we can work on the methodology.
that would be
and
amazing.
Table that,
Yeah.
how about that? Yeah.
Now, how do we go about making sure that LDH does do a methodology in an appropriate timeline? Because that's something that is gonna be a huge question and a
So-
huge concern.
Yeah.
Caroline's already drafted a letter that we have signed on, and we were waiting to turn it in to see if you guys were interested. And Caroline can send it to Ebony, and maybe Ebony can send it out.
I'm sorry, I was
Okay.
talking to.
Side
Brenda. I'm sorry, I was
conversations.
having a side conversation.
Ebony,
I'm so sorry.
you did not follow the rules.
You say it one more time.
Yeah.
I apologize.
So Caroline has drafted a letter to go to LDH about the rate methodology and using the, ARPA funds that are left over to do the rate methodology. And, we were holding off to see what you guys thought about it before we sent it out. We have our names on it, but would love to have the council also be part of it. And so, Caroline can send you the letter and you can send it out, or do you have to vote on it now? Like, how does that work?
I
Do
think
you sign?
Cause I have it on my phone. I could send it out.
Can also.
It'll usually take probably about 2 years to create a methodology
Yeah.
Mm.
behind
But
it.
if we put a timeline, like,
The complete.
I mean,
I,
yeah, I don't want anyone to think this is happening.
no,
this
it's
session.
not, no.
No,
Think
no,
it
that's what I'm
happens
saying.
to be
It'll
done
take
well.
about 2 years to
Yes.
create the
But not- I
methodology.
mean, if we put.
I feel like it would happen
time
before next
limit
session.
Instead of 5, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So like by 26.
26.
I mean, I think one thing you have to consider is the methodology
Get that from.
right now shouldn't be guiding what you want to do right now.
Right.
No.
The
it's for the
methodology
future.
is something you should sign
Mhm,
on to, in my opinion,
Mhm.
and we can work together on that.
mhm.
But that's a separate conversation.
Yeah.
We can be working on this section.
Yeah.
Because that is not this section.
Yeah. Right.
That is something that,
And
So
it's
that
not
would-
legislative.
Yeah.
So that's why I said, maybe.
that's a long range.
Yeah,
project.
work on the rates being closer, and then our long range project being the methodology, getting that. What do y'all think?
Do we need to have an agenda item that form a study group within LDH to look at the methodology, say it,
Methodology.
that by 2026 or no. I don't.
I don't think you need to have at all.
Sorry.
No, they're gonna do that.
It's a
It's a good
very,
thought.
for us too, Jill, it's been very complex because you want to make the families happy, you want to make providers happy, you want to make workers happy. So you have a huge encompassing portion of individuals
We
that
can
you're
take- we can take baby
compromise.
steps.
Right,
You really have to make them all healthy.
yes.
Yeah.
Get happy. You gotta be healthy, and if you're not healthy, none of it's gonna
Thriving,
work.
yeah,
Yeah.
we need them all to be thriving. And so I think our first step, in my personal opinion, for this year is to start the process of being
Okay.
able to thrive, like.
Okay, so I kind of jumped the gun.
So.
But I do want to, yeah, just because Jill, I think with the methodology, we're going to ask LDH to hire an external contractor. And I would ask in that contract that it includes what people they're going to talk to do the rate methodology. So that's when I think, a work group, what you were suggesting is going to be important.
And now, all of this sounds amazing in theory. What if we propose it and then they tell us no? Do we then have to revisit it because it's not a legislative fix? So how do we advocate for it from there?
If LDH says no.
Yeah, well, if they do not accept the use of the ARPA.
Use the
fund,
ARPA
ARPA funds. I think they will.
I think they will. If they don't, then I think the legislature. gets
Okay,
involved.
okay. So
Then
then
we
it
would-
would be a legislative
Mhm.
item.
I
Okay,
think to
So-
push on them or
So
appropriate.
maybe a motion to see if they would use the ARPA funds? And if not.
because this is what I'm thinking.
I know, I'm just asking.
Yeah, we don't need a.
We don't need that, okay, that's good.
That's
This is where my brain is.
Okay,
Can
so-
we
Yeah.
get a timeline? Like, okay, let's say, for instance, I know this won't happen, but like, let's say you go back to the office and you submit it today. When would we have an answer from LDH that they would actually approve or disapprove the use of the ARPA funds for the methodology?
Well, they have to use the funds soon
They lose them, right?
or they're gonna lose them.
Okay.
So,
Because if we could know something like before Christmas, I mean, we may be able to keep our agenda item and just.
know if we're gonna.
Cause
No.
I don't wanna put like that type of.
That's what I'm saying, like how,
Yeah.
like what is the timeline that we will know whether or whether or not that, is there one, or is it just?
Yeah,
up-
there-
It's a-
Okay, okay.
Don't our funds have studies
I thought they had
by
used by December.
March.
Yeah.
Oh, is it March? I thought it was December.
of 25?
Oh, it's 25.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So they basically have until that time to make.
So, I mean, much of, we don't have like a whole handful of time.
Okay.
Making a match, maybe.
Just as a point of order for those that are watching this on YouTube, there's a lot of people talking at the same time and talking over each other. And so I'm being told there's a lot of feedback there. So please, one at a time.
Okay.
Then when you're done,
Good
on to the next person.
Thank you. All right, so, I need a motion. Or do we need a?
What,
motion, or-
so
Yes, Jan.
are we aiming to close the night and day reimbursement gap to the 2024 agenda?
That's what you guys are deciding right now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
so that's
Yep.
the council's agenda.
Yes.
So,
Mhm.
okay, so it's motion time, Angela, let's go.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so
Jill has
how do I do this?
make a motion
motion.
to close the gap between the nighttime reimbursement rate and the daytime reimbursement. rate.
I'm
To change,
making a motion. I'm making a motion. I make a motion to change the 2024 agenda legislative agenda item that the funding increase from DSP now, for it to say to close the gap between the daytime reimbursement rate and the daytime reimbursement rate. Right,
yes,
okay.
good job. Okay,
Okay, so we are. Oh, I'm sorry.
yes,
I know Lisa.
I'm coming.
be waiting, be patient.
I don't know. I feel like I'm a kid. Here. Hurts really bad. Oh. I second, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just waiting on you to finish. Like. It is usually.
I put on my card.
I like stopped my car to get mine. I'm like.
I brought my jacket.
So we have a motion from you, Jill Kano. And that we change our 2024 legislative agenda item from funding increase for direct support worker pay raises to closing the gap between the daytime and nighttime reimbursement rates. And it was seconded by Angela Harmon. Is any discussion? Is there any public comment? Yeah. Any objections? All right. Since there are no objections, it is passed by unanimous consent. All right, and we'll change that agenda item.
Thank you guys so much for meeting with
Yeah,
us.
thank you.
Thank you so
Really appreciate it, but it's
much.
simplified.
Wanted to, so I,
Okay.
yes, I encompass, Orleans, Jefferson, Plaquemines, and Saint Bernard.
I live
One
in.
second, one second.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Hearing no additional questions, we'll move on to our announcements. Our next council meeting will be held January 17th and 18th. The staff have already contacted the Louisiana Department of Health's legal office again after the October council meeting, and we were informed that LDH's legal office is drafting a rule and anticipates it to be released March 2024. Therefore, all council meetings will still be held in person. All right. Does anybody else on the committee have any announcements to make? No? Hearing none, if there are no objections, we can adjourn by unanimous consent. Any objections? I hereby adjourn the meeting at 3:29.